Welcome to Get Up and Scale podcast. Today we had Brian Cain with Crawl Entertainment. Brian's a very ambitious and interesting entrepreneur. He launched his pub crawl down in New Orleans about 5 years ago. He's now in 4 cities, including internationally in London. We had a great conversation about scaling his business, about the early days of founding it, doing street, like face-to-face sales, growing his team, some of the challenges when he first started opening up in new cities, and now where he's at today, which is figuring out what his exit plan looks like and figuring out what model to use for future expansion. So looking forward to showing you guys the conversation.
I gotta work, grind. That's just the way it is. I gotta get up, scale, and grow my biz. I gotta scale, grow, get up, go, scale, grow, get up, go.
Yeah, welcome to Get Up and Scale, Brian. We appreciate you coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me. First, can I say Get Up and Scale? I love the branding and pun in there. It's awesome. So
it's a portmanteau, if you will.
But yeah, no, I love it. It's great.
Hey, Brian, that's a sweet setup you got there. Is that real?
Yeah.
Nice. There's so many fake backgrounds, I almost believed it. Like, I almost thought this is something you put together. It looks so good.
So I thought, and you see the human walking by right there too.
Real human.
It really is. Yeah. So.
Are you in a co-working space?
Kind of. So we have like a dedicated office inside a building that has co-working, but I don't think they do a great job of advertising that they're co-working because no one ever works like right out here. Everyone has their own individual office.
Yep.
So
yeah, it looks sweet.
Crawl Entertainment Group office in downtown Nashville.
Cool.
Nice, man.
Well, it's a killer office. I have a feeling your company has outlived your time there, though, so far. So you started Crawl Entertainment Group in 2019?
So, kind of. I started Crawl New Orleans in 2019, and it was a standalone. And then the goal was to add 1 or 2 markets a year, and obviously 2020 happened. So we didn't launch in Nashville until the beginning of 2022. So literally just hit like the pause button for 2 years. But it was like legally formed in the beginning of 2020. And then Austin the year after, and then London launched in October, albeit in kind of a different aspect to the rest of the operations, where we do like weekly reoccurring tours, similar to what Kai and Justin both do. But we did just like crawls based around the NFL games that happened there last year. So there were 3 specifically in London. And so we did crawls Friday and Saturday evening on those weekends leading up. And now we're actually just getting ready to like relaunch as a like standard tour company coming up here very soon. So like the beginning of Q2, we'll operate there like a normal operation.
Nice. So how many cities are you in now total? Is that 4?
4, that'll make 4, yes.
And you moved your headquarters to Nashville?
I did.
Nice. What made you make that decision?
There's no state tax in Tennessee.
There you go.
Man.
It's literally so also, just it's centrally located, so I'm looking at a northeast city, and just kind of like flying in between, it just makes it a little bit more manageable. Being in Nashville, it feels like there's a direct flight everywhere, versus New Orleans is not quite the same. So also talent, I had brought on a few employees in the Nashville area that were a little bit more conducive to scaling versus just awesome like tour guides we have in New Orleans. So that also kind of lent to that, where I needed someone in an office versus New Orleans is a little bit more guide centric, if you will.
Yeah. When you say a crawl, what does that mean? Like describe to people what Crawl Entertainment is, but just exactly what you do. What is a crawl?
Do they all get on all 4s during this?
We hope that doesn't happen, but it probably has a time or 2 in the 5 years of operation. As a rule, most people hear crawl, they think of pub crawl, and we definitely lean into that a little bit. I think that I've tried to almost not redefine the word, but we do all sorts of different types of crawls. So at its core, we're a walking tour company. We don't own any buses or anything like that. But we offer lots of different types of crawls. Definitely your standard pub crawl. We do a nightlife tour that is like a pub crawl on steroids, bars and nightclubs in one night. That's definitely our most popular option. It's also, the first product that we offered, and then it's the flagship in every new city or market we open in. That's the first tour. But we also do the haunted crawl as a haunted history tour that stops at pubs. We do the food crawl, which is a food tour. So a lot of branding into that, and we try to label everything as a crawl. I think there's definitely been a little bit of a challenge there. We're moving into doing like corporate events, and I think some people probably skip over it a little because of that moniker. But messaging and a little bit of different advertising and polished website landing pages, I think, lend into, hey, we're a walking tour company that just branded it with this name.
Yeah, so Brian, I don't think I've ever heard like your origin story. Talk to me about like, how did you get the idea, and like what were the early days like when you launched in New Orleans?
So it's actually one of those like entrepreneurial kind of like lessons. And I worked for someone else that did something super similar. I moved so originally I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a blue collar kid. I went to city school. I was a musician. I played in a band, and I was a bartender. So just kind of all of these like tourism, entertainment, also
yes, guys.
Just all of it like right, in there. And then being from a blue collar, like super typical Pittsburgh family, work ethic. I've always just been a general grinder and not afraid to, just work my ass off, to be honest. I moved to Vegas in 2011 to be a bartender, and after like the first season, I worked at Wet Republic. It's like a pool club through the summer, and right at the end of that season, essentially everyone gets laid off for the winter. I found a Craigslist ad for a sales position for what at the time was Las Vegas Club Crawl, and it was essentially my VIP bar and club crawl. It was that on Las Vegas Boulevard, and I was one of the guys stopping you on the street trying to sell you a ticket. And what's super interesting is,
that'll teach you how to hustle right there.
Yeah. So, and you know what? At first, I was so bad at it. It was like how do these people, how do they make so many sales? And then I really, just devoted a lot of time to like learning cold sales at its core. Stop someone who doesn't really want to talk to you, make them like you, and take their money in 11 minutes. And then have them thank you for it afterwards. Like that's like the whole goal. And so I watched that company scale from, doing, under 100,000 a year to, millions and millions of dollars in a year. Yeah. So through that, I just saw some of their struggles, and things that I thought that they should be doing like a lot better. And ultimately I worked for them for about 6 years. They opened in other cities, San Diego, Miami, and then employees of theirs opened in other cities. So Gold Coast, Australia, I worked in Ibiza, Spain for another friend. And so, eventually I wanted equity. I didn't start my first real, business in this industry till I was almost 35. So that was kind of the reason why I left, how I learned it. But I specifically went to New Orleans because it was a city, one, that they weren't in, because I wasn't really looking to like step on their toes. I learned so much from them. And just tourist centric, lots of bars and clubs in a really like concentrated area. In addition to just, a city known for partying. And it started as me. I literally stood on the street. I sold like carbon copy paper pub crawl tickets. So, wrote out with a pen, gave someone a white copy. I kept the yellow copy.
Wait, so you moved there first, right?
I moved there and just looked I vacationed there first. And I'm like, let me take a walk around. Is this possible? And I knew in literally an hour, I was like, yeah, this is 100% possible. And so, there we go. So yeah, the VIP bar and club crawl was literally the first, the only tour, and I was the only guide. So the interesting thing about New Orleans is you have to be a certified tour guide to be able to guide tours, whether they're based in history or not. You have to pass a test, and each guide can only take 28 guests per tour. So I went out there.
Oh wow, there's like a limit.
Specific.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of weird.
So you don't want to do 29 because that
God forbid.
Bad.
So funny enough, the first tour sold out. But again, it was me on the corner. And just super, like DIY, really kind of like guerrilla style.
How much did people pay for back then for a pub crawl ticket?
Well, it was listed as $59, but again, I was the one selling it, so I was willing to do like 2-for-1 tickets. It was more than anything, I just wanted to prove to the venues that had said yes that I could put people in the venue, but I wasn't willing to give away the ticket, because if you give it away, people just don't show up. So I had to get them to buy something. So so I would say probably most of that first tour was ticket average at about $40, 28 guests. And then I sold out the next one too. So it was like I went out the next morning.
Wow.
And that's kind of where it was born.
What was the hardest part of that? Was it getting the partnerships with those clubs and that, or was it getting the customers, or was it something else?
I would say getting permitted to operate in New Orleans was definitely a challenge. There was a lot more that went into it than I had initially known. There's almost 400 tour companies in New Orleans. And so, having to have the tour guide license, to own a tour company, to be, occupational license in the city, there was a lot of kind of HR type stuff that I didn't know about. You don't hire an attorney from day one. So it's, me showing up at City Hall trying to get the permits to be able to operate. And then definitely the clubs, right? So there were a few that were really easy to get because they just understood the concept, but a few more that were kind of Bourbon Street is a bar crawl. We don't really need this. And then on top of that, I'm not only asking to bring people in, but I'm trying to convince them to donate a shot or give us a drink special or so. There was definitely a lot of, relationship building that went into that. As far as getting customers, I was super confident. I thought, I've sold tens of thousands of crawl tickets in my life for someone else. So I was confident I'd be able to do that, but it took a solid 5 months of the permitting stuff to be able to legally operate in the city.
Yeah. Do you think that did you find that customers also had that same question? Why do I need to do a crawl if I could just go do these things without, a tour guide involved? Or what's the biggest selling point when it comes to why they should do a crawl with you, and how was that process at the beginning, and has it changed at all?
So no, I would say it's probably remained the same, albeit now obviously a little different. People Google things to do in New Orleans, best party in New Orleans, and we're ranking really high, which we can get into how that has happened because I'm not on the street selling tickets anymore.
Yeah. You're not?
Overcoming objections is something that I was just so used to being in a cold sales environment, doing this all over. So, if I were to, Justin, give you my sales pitch right now, it'd be, of course you can do this on your own, but wouldn't it be more fun to go out with a group of people who have all identified that they want to go out tonight, they want to have a good time, and there's 60 bars on Bourbon Street, we've picked the best 4, and you're not going to wait in line, you're not going to pay a cover charge. So those would be my kind of key selling points leading up to overcoming your objections of wanting to walk away or asking how long I'm going to be there for, that you need to think about it. So, but still to this day, it's still that same idea is, hey, we have relationships with clubs. We're going to skip the line whenever you walk in. There will be a line whenever you go to walk in, and ultimately just meeting a lot of people from all over the world who also really don't know where to go in any city that we operate in.
Yeah, the social aspect has to be the main thing, right? If you're traveling with a small group, you get to meet a larger group that you can bond with and hang out for the night.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's things that we do that are, I will say like proprietary. It's not anyone could really do them, but just like icebreaker things at the very beginning of the evening that like kind of allow people to let their guard down, because we know how weird it is to potentially come into this, like, you're going to go on a crawl that now can move close to 100 people, right? So albeit we can't walk down the street with that many in like,
Or 28.
well, 4 tour guides per 100 people, Kai, and ground transportation.
Gotcha.
Of New
I
Orleans.
thought I got you there. I was going to call New Orleans.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just a few things that we do that like make it a little bit more like interactive with kind of self-deprecating humor, and our guides are just really animated and are used to bringing in kind of like people who don't know each other and are complete strangers at the beginning to a really awesome, bit raunchy, cohesive group by the end of the evening.
Yeah. A main point of this podcast, I think, is to help people figure out ways that they can scale their own business and whatever it is that they do. So my question for you in that sense is like, when/why did you decide to hire your first tour guide and start getting yourself from within the business to working on the business? Like how did scaling come about for you? When did you first decide to start making some changes and making those moves to really start scaling to now Crawl Entertainment?
That's such a great question. It happened really quickly. So once I realized that I could only sell 28 people, it took me standing on the street to do it. And then I needed another licensed tour guide to be able to sell any more than that on given tour. It was really quickly. So even before our first tour, I put out like, the typical Craigslist, marketing PR advertisement on, get paid to party. Yeah. So we obviously got a lot of submissions there. Not that many qualified candidates, but
I was going to say that's going to be an interesting list right there that you can pull from in the future if you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty much right from the start, we had a trainee on our first tour, and that was for like the tour guide position. And again, that went into the just the limitation of only being able to take 28 guests on a tour. So I put out the ad on the Craigslist, and again, lots of applications there. Not so many qualified candidates, but someone came on that first tour, and then right afterwards, I started hiring for, or attempting to hire for, the sales position, which is really what led me to changing the whole aspect of the business, where we don't do street sales anymore, because it was super difficult, training someone up to kind of the level that, I learned by necessity for a company that's all they did. So the opportunity to like learn by osmosis was there because I was standing next to someone that was also selling on the street. Versus I found it really hard to train like new hires in New Orleans for the sales side, because I own the company and no one else is selling anything. So they weren't buying into the idea that they could ever get that good. So I felt like it was a bit of a like a crutch to them, where they're like, well, the only person that's selling any tickets is the guy that owns the company. He's been selling tickets for the last 7 years of his life. How am I ever going to get to be that good? So that's kind of what led me to learn so much in SEO and digital marketing and whatnot, because it was just not scalable as me standing on the street every Thursday, Friday, Saturday afternoon. So that's kind of your vision.
Was your playbook right away to expand into other cities? Like from day one, was that part of your plan, or did at some point that kind of occur to you?
I think probably in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, well, if this works, I'd like to explore the idea of going to other cities. It wasn't necessarily part of the initial business plan, though. So when I first did the business plan, it was strictly for New Orleans. And then once I was able to leverage, just being able to sell like marginally well online, that's when I thought, okay, this is kind of like self-sustaining in New Orleans. We're selling tickets. Let's see what the next city looks like. And again, there was definitely some experimentation there, and probably COVID, even though it was a hindrance, might have been a gift in disguise, because I really learned so much about just like digital marketing and how to leverage that into opening the new cities. So it probably led to the success of the other markets by not being able to open a new city as quickly as I initially wanted to.
Yeah. I find that a lot of people like want to expand into different markets when they could just expand their current offering and make as much money as they would by going into a whole new market. So what was the strategy there for you as far as like picking a different market and why even go outside of where you are to 2, 3, 4 different places now instead of, focusing on just growing that one main location? Obviously you're doing both at the same time, right? You're still growing that one location, but why take the leap and even go to the second location, especially knowing how far apart they are for you? That's got to be a lot of extra work. So what's the thought process there behind that?
So I think that, and that's such a good question because I was so nervous launching the new city. Like I thought, should I be focusing more on expanding in the New Orleans market? And I think that it probably lends specifically into the challenges of operating in New Orleans because of the tour guide license, finding like the quality candidates, the people who, one, want to be tour guides, or two, want to leave the company that they're currently working for, which is difficult because there's so many in New Orleans and there's only so many like good ones. Yeah. And then there's, the haunted tour market in New Orleans is just absolutely crazy. So you have kind of this almost like tour guide like community, right? Where there's like hundreds and hundreds of guides who all have jumped from one company to the next. And I found it pretty challenging to being, one, younger than a lot of the tour guides, two, like new to that market. Hiring like quality guides to expand the offerings was like super difficult. So I think that being such a challenge made it easier for me to see, okay, well, I'm not growing as fast as I want to here. We're obviously doing well in so our haunted tour did well enough. Our party tour was like really growing. So I'm like, all right, I think that I'll probably have more luck going to another city than I will be trying to prove myself in this market and to get those new guides in that city. I don't know that it would be the same if I had started somewhere else. Like if I would have started it in Nashville, I think that I probably would have waited so much longer to move into another market, because I think expanding here or growing the business inside the Nashville market, I think would have been much easier initially than it was in New Orleans.
What were the challenges you saw when you first opened up? Once you went from like a single unit operator to having two, what were the big challenges you had to overcome during that process? We like you, we did it pretty quickly. Within the first year of opening, we started expanding to other cities, and we had so many growing pains. But, is your business model just lend itself to scaling really well, or did you face some challenges with managing multiple locations?
So to start, it actually was it was pretty easy. I hired some really good tour guides right from the jump in the new city, and I think that's probably for most of us that's what the biggest challenge is the tour guide going to show up, right? It's like such like a fear where you're not in that city on that date. So like the first day that I wasn't in town for a tour and I went to I was in the other city, it was like what is going to happen here, and it just went really well, and could have not gone well. So I would say hiring, it was so important, and it led to definitely making the expansion easier. And we also grew pretty quick in the new market, and I think that was part of just the brand in general. Like people knew it. We sent out big email blasts, hey, we're opening in Nashville. The venues were easier to acquire because I had metrics on, hey, this is how many people we move in New Orleans. This is our, kind of business plan in the new market. So I feel pretty lucky in having hired a pretty decent team early on. And then that kind of led to Austin, where also I have a great lead, funny enough, who I met at Arrival. And so that has allowed us to, I think, scale probably faster and pretty easily because I have those players in place. But, knock on wood, if everyone quit tomorrow, what would I do, right? So I think that, there's still, even to this day, challenges there because, like you guys, you're franchisors. So, you have someone that's like legitimately bought into it, where for me, like I don't. So I'm still, not necessarily, I don't have the fear because, I trust the people that are running those cities, but it's still definitely, it could potentially be a challenge in any new market.
Do you think you'll ever
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Justin.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you think you'll ever get to the point where maybe you do give a person in a different market like equity in that market? Do you think you'll change kind of the model of how you've expanded, or do you think you'll just kind of continue to do the way that you've done so far?
So I appreciate that question because here's my sales pitch. So the London market is operating very differently from the others. Because of this specifically, it's difficult for being American operating a company in London who can accept payments in London. So to start, we were able to operate tours in London, but I was selling people domestically who were going over to London for their NFL package, right? So the logistics of that, it was easier to operate that way because we were essentially, we weren't using a DMC, but it was something like kind of along those lines. So the new-ish model that I'm kind of like playing with is the idea of licensing the brand and then having operational companies in each new market. So I'm a partner with someone in London for the operations side of Crawl London. And so that company, again, and it's just two of us, that company pays a licensing fee to Crawl Entertainment Group to use Crawl London. And then it's very similar to, I imagine how, I know about your businesses. So, I know there's a percentage, not only in marketing, but in, like the franchising fee. Same thing without the franchising buy-in or all of the logistics behind being a actual like franchisor. Mm-hmm. So the only venture like that is London. So it's definitely something that I'm like really considering. And I think moving forward is how I would like to see it happen. But albeit I need the operation side to be there, or people actually want to do this under that model. But I don't want to continue to expand the way that we have currently. I think we're at our kind of like bandwidth there for like this type of operation specifically, without it messing with current operations or the ability to grow.
Yeah, Kai,
Yeah,
this is sounding familiar, Kai.
Yeah, I mean, this is the classic story, right? Like a small business grows, opens a few locations, and then realizes at a certain point you've kind of gone ahead of your skis in terms of how much you've taken on, and then you start to have turnover. You have these key employees, like you said, people are the big asset. Well, what happens if they quit, right, or take another job, or whatever, or you have to replace them because they're not doing a good job? You do that a couple times and have to travel across the country and like retrain people, and you suddenly realize like there has to be a better way, which the corporate strategy can work. Look, some people do a really good job, and I mean, look at Hornblower. Well, look at him, but look at Hornblower. They, you can grow as big as you get as a corporate store, but for a lot of people, they start to think about licensing and franchising when you get right there around 4 or 5 locations. Yep. Is where a lot of people hit the limit and say, all right, do I want to give myself more and more headaches when I grow, or do I want to find a different way of doing this?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's literally where I am right now. I think that I'm not like upset with how quickly that I've like kind of like opened the new locations, but my day is long, right? And again, I've signed up for it, but I have blocks of time where it's like, okay, I'm working on a completely new program that I think is super awesome, but like I still have to do these XYZs that are like inside the business. So like for Brian specifically, would it be better to have someone that is like a 40% partner in the new city and legitimately have like a stake in the growth of that market versus having just like a normal employee that is making a little on profit share? I think that at this point the company would grow quicker with very strategic partners who are like boots on the ground in that city and have much more stake in the operation there than where we are today.
Yeah. I was listening to Pete from Tourpreneur give a speech about the end game, and he talks a lot about like figuring out what your end goal is and kind of like working back from there towards your end goal so you have a plan. My problem is I don't really have an end game where I'm at right now. Like I'm just enjoying what I'm doing, opening the location, so on and so forth. Do you have like a specific, hey, I want to reach X amount of locations or I want to exit at, X amount? Like, do you have an end goal where you're at now, or kind of what are you pushing for at this point?
So I'm kind of like directly in between that, right? So I really enjoy where we are. It's been super humbling, kind of coming into this space and, even being invited here, right? So you guys are literally the two that have done like what I'm like trying to do, right? So it's super like flattering being able to be here talking to you guys. But I don't have that how many cities or like a specific like revenue goal. But like I don't want to own the company in 10 years, right? So there is definitely a moment of, okay, can I scale to, let's say 6 and or like 8 cities is kind of like what I envision. Mm-hmm. And then who's the strategic partner that I can like bring in and or sell it to that can take our like branding and infrastructure in this kind of like, entertainment experience industry and put it into their 24 or 32 cities. So is it, hop on, hop off, who, are everywhere. Right. They don't do the entertainment style thing. They do kind of the more informational, family centric or, city experiences or, the three of us can create a conglomerate and just, take over the world that way. I don't want to personally put it into that many cities. So I'd rather, I want to try to create as much value as I can in a great product in great cities, and then allow someone that really understands the scaling of it on, on the mass or like macro scale, and have them come on as, a strategic partner, whether that's buy me out completely or, like a percentage or whatever that looks like. That's why I envision it to be. Yeah. But again, it could change in 2 years time with, I hire the right person and maybe it changes. But if Hop On Hop Off are listening to this, Brian at crawlentertainment.com.
Yeah, right.
How long you started in 2019?
Mm-hmm.
So you're about 4 or 5 years into this.
Yeah. So it'll be our 5-year launch will be in May. Our anniversary of that matter will be May. And obviously COVID was a very weird time, albeit we were able to kind of operate in New Orleans on and off through that. But 5 years since its formation.
Brett, I think when you first met me, I was 5 years in, and I had a lot less gray hair and less wrinkles on my forehead.
Yeah,
I remember at 5 years, I think, Justin, you're about the same, right?
Yes, I'm at 7.5 years coming up here.
Okay. Yep. Season between. Yep. Yeah, I still remember. I think I was still happy back then. Just kidding. I still had a lot of like enthusiasm. I guess I still do, right? But like,
yes,
the longer you're in
enthusiasm.
Yeah, I do. But yeah, it's weird. Like the longer you get in stuff, like I feel like the more perspective and the more clarity on the end game you get. Like Justin still sounds like you're still in this phase where you're like, I love what I do. I'm just going to keep going and see where this goes, which is awesome. That's where I was like when we met Brett. We were just kind of like, we have fun ideas. We're going to do what we enjoy. Brian, you're still like pretty early, but it sounds like you've had a lot of success really quickly. Like I'm at the part where I've been doing this a long time, 12 years, and so like, basically the longer I got in, the more clarity on what I wanted from the business, like it crystallized more and more, and the ability for me to set discrete goals got easier and easier as I like grew as a businessman, and frankly just became older as a person. Went from being like a young, fun, single business owner, like out there enjoying the nightlife with my customers, to now where I'm a family man and I'm thinking about like, what are my financial objectives, right? And so it's kind of a natural process, and there's nothing wrong with seeing where things go and enjoying the ride.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I feel that because so I'm single with no kids. I'm 5 years into the journey, but I'm also 40, right? So where Justin is 7.5 years into business,
And
and
he's 7.
and a decade younger. You know what I mean? So I feel like I'm like kind of in the middle there of, I don't really love being out on the tour, like, and I don't have to be on the
Yeah.
tour, but there's definitely moments of, like we had an issue that on one of the tours, it comes across my desk. So I'm in Nashville. I didn't tell anyone that I was just going to show up at the venue we had an issue with. And again, it was nothing like crazy, but I was like, oh, I just want to see it with my own eyes. But, that was, 9:45 p.m. on a Friday night where, I'm up at 5 a.m. So, I don't love being out on the tour. I also don't announce to any customer that I'm even affiliated, so it's like the guides are now nervous because here's Brian at the end of the bar having a drink. The bartender's nervous because they know who I am. And so I think I have that that exit strategy because of being like 40 and okay, like I don't really want to have to be doing this in 5 years, checking in on tours,
Yeah.
and so, but also young in business and okay, well, are there going to be enough commas, for me really to want to exit when we're on this like upward trajectory, so it's interesting hearing the dynamics of like how both of you feel in it, because I feel like I'm embodying both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
You look good for your age, Brian. I was going to say, I didn't realize you were older than me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was.
I thought you were younger as well.
Yeah, man. You've had tremendous success very early on. I think it was Sam Waltman who founded Walmart. He didn't do that till he was 44.
I know, right?
And that was his first location. Like you have a long time and a lot of opportunity in front of you. Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
Yeah. I got a question from one of the last things that you just said that I think I'll ask the Kai too. Like, as you grow and get into new markets, quality control is like a tough thing to do across the business, whether it's tour guides, whether it's managers, whether it's franchisees. Like, it doesn't matter who it is, just quality control in general is really tough. It sounds like part of your quality control is literally having to show up and go and be there. But like, how do you guys both look at quality control from beyond just showing up? Like what are you guys looking at on the back end to make sure that the tours are going off well, or like your new locations are doing what they should be doing? What does quality control kind of look like?
I'd like to hear from Kai first.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have a whole segment on this with our franchisee training, is that like our businesses, Justin's included, are very different than a normal business where supervision is really intuitive, right? Like if you own a coffee shop, you just can show up and see how things are going. For tour businesses, like the owner, like the most important part of the experience for the customer, the owner has no like direct supervision of, for the most part, right? Like you can show up, Brian, at a bar and see the tour, or Justin, you might be able to catch them on their kayaks, but we don't know what's truly going on, right? At least directly. So you have to do QC with indirect methods, right? And you have to use a combination of them to figure it out. I mean, some of it's really intuitive, like obviously customer reviews and feedback are important, interviewing customers, secret shopper, right? Paying people to go and fill out surveys about their experience, where all the safety guidelines followed. And then, figuring out what metrics are like red flags. Brett developed like a scorecard and a system of flags that can show up with certain things will indicate that there's issues with the experience. or issues with management, such as refund rates, right? Like sudden tour cancellations. All of the customer reviews are publicly posted to a Slack channel so everyone can see them. Like, we own 14 corporate stores, so we have a pretty big, we have a lot on our plate in that, like, we're managing a lot of cities on our own, and we're also like administering a franchise at the same time and overseeing manufacturing. So we had to develop ways of understanding what's going on really quickly and to automate those processes so we knew, like, we didn't have a choice. You know what I mean? So we just have to use a variety of ways to do it. And the nice thing is customers tend to be pretty vocal when things went wrong.
They do. Yeah, they do.
As I'm sure is all that we know. So generally speaking, like, if something really bad happened, like, there's going to be hollering from the customer, but other than that, you have to use all this other tools.
Yeah, we definitely do something very like similar. And as far as I would say that the number one is our tour report. So our guides after each tour have like we use Jot form, but they have to go on and tour time, guide, how many were booked, how many arrived, and then our guides take photos and videos like of the tour, and we have a shared drive it has to be uploaded to. So lots of little like check boxes, and then the guide has to rate the tour. And then it asks, was there an incident?
Interesting.
And so then,
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
If not 5 stars, why? And then they have to explain, So, I read those, every morning, specifically on Sunday mornings because, Friday, Saturday is obviously just our busiest days. Yeah. So I go through and read literally every report from every tour in every city to see what's going on. And for the most part, my guides understand that this is my baby, right? So we have this kind of like company ethos in, I worked really hard. I brought you on to be part of the team, and we are all like a reflection of each other and the brand in itself. So as a rule, I don't really have any problematic guides. I have in the past, and you can just identify it like really quickly. So most of them understand like what is not okay and how to deal with the situation, put it in the tour report, and then if I have to escalate it to a venue or like anything like that, like we had an issue in New Orleans. It really had nothing to do with the venue. There's like a sidewalk that is just destroyed. We have to walk in the street to like avoid it, and so now it's a city issue, but it was in the tour report, so I don't necessarily need to be in the city to now know that, well, okay, maybe we have to adjust the route by a block to make sure that no one's going to fall into this hole, So, but it was a product of understanding in a tour report that this is a thing, and but it may need me to go to deal with it, right? So there's still that challenge, but I would say for me, that tour report for sure.
Yeah. That's a cool idea. I like that.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
And you're probably getting that data from all your locations, including London. Which, by the way, congratulations on the international expansion, man. That's a huge deal.
It's I say like I probably opened it initially just to tell people I owned a business in London. I mean, it's an impressive thing to be able to say to someone. Like I get the same reaction pretty much all the time. They're like,
"Yeah,
what, in London?"
You get expense trips out there, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, it is. It's a big challenge. It's like it will be profitable. It's new, so it's not yet.
Yeah.
I'm really curious on your decision to go there. I know here at Tour Scale, we've been fascinated at the idea of dropping, boats in the water, bikes on the roads for like an event. I don't know if Justin's toyed around with that idea for kayaks, but it sounds like you started there with the NFL games, kind of to test the waters a little bit, and then you decide to stay. Would you recommend that when you went into London, were you just trying to test it out, or were you at first just going to do the games and then stop?
So it was definitely to test it initially. Okay. It was specifically a play towards, like, we didn't partner with the NFL, but that is potentially a goal. I would love to do the NFL experience crawl for the Super Bowl at every city every year. Mm-hmm. Hints. It's in New
Yeah, they're
Orleans.
listening. They're listening.
Yeah, we'll have Gary Bettman on the next episode, and we'll ask him.
Yeah. Well,
Mr. Goodell. So, it started as like the event style thing, but also there's a big like marketing play there. So how do I advertise to more people in the U.S. to let them know about our brand and the cities that we operate in? And like, it's hard to, I mean, as all of you know, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to advertise specifically to the person that's traveling to Austin. Like, how do you identify that person?
right.
Before, right? So there's ways, and hacks that we've kind of all, like learned, but they're not like, none of them are foolproof. But knowing the markets that are going to have games in London months and months in advance, it now allows me to run advertising for this event style crawl in those markets. So anyone now that's a Buffalo Bills fan, I can market to Buffalo, which I would never specifically target Buffalo, right? Because how many people in Buffalo are going to the cities that we're in? But now I have like an actual like tangible event where I can say like, hey Buffalo, are you going to the game? I can then explain, in the landing page, hey, this company that operates here, 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 and here is running the NFL experience for, Buffalo Bills fans for this game.
Yeah.
So, and then, Buffalo plays, enter whatever team. So then I can do it for both,
Yeah.
So
And for this test specifically, were people booking days out or weeks out?
Weeks out.
Weeks out. Okay, so you had those tours booked, in some cases months before the event actually happened. That's awesome.
So I get pretty lucky with having like met the right person who introduced me to the right person digitally.
Yeah.
And so we partnered with a group called Stonegate Hospitality, who own and manage more bars and pubs than any other hospitality group in the UK. And so they were super excited to partner. And I started selling tickets for it like before the route was even finished. So kind of put the carriage in front of the horse there.
Yeah, right.
A little bit, hoping that I wouldn't just have to refund everybody. But, it worked out. Definitely some like legitimate challenges on the operational side there. But it worked. So
Yeah.
we'll leave it there.
That's so cool.
And then as
The
far
photo
as
on the bottom.
to
The photo on the bottom, Brett. Scroll down real quick. This guy has like most morbid look I've ever seen in the middle. He's like work with a
Or else. Dot.
And 330. Yeah, and he's the bouncer for all 333 bars.
Get out of here, mate. Can anyone do a British accent? Like,
I'm not even
come
going
in
to attempt.
No one could do it. All right, fine.
I'm not going to attempt.
no,
That's cool. I love the idea of like these pop-up crawls. I feel like you could have something just with doing pop-up crawls across the US or wherever, like that surround an event, right? I think of all of the Swifties that go to like a Taylor Swift concert, right? Like imagine she's having a concert in the middle of Iowa, and for 2 days before and 2 days after, when everyone is like traveling to where it's happening, right? You have this kind of Taylor Swift themed crawl for 4 days. Like there's so many cool little like pop-up ideas that just randomly came in my head, I know, right?
So funny enough, we're running Taylor Swift crawls in New Orleans in October when she comes to town.
Love it. So with the pub crawls, I've noticed these themed crawls. Like in Raleigh, there was like a big Harry Potter crawl, for instance. Mm-hmm. How does the intellectual property work for that? Can you sell pub crawls with a theme? Like, do you have to avoid the use of any of the trademark terms, for instance? Like you can't say NFL, I'm sure.
No, cannot say NFL, no. So to be honest, those themed crawls are like the bane of my existence. I'm in like litigation against 2 of them right now.
Oh, really?
The thing is, and I don't want this to go into like a bashing session of them, but they set up business in one state and then they essentially sell through usually Eventbrite, where you get to upload one insurance policy, you upload one EIN, you sell everything through that state, and then you just throw these really cheap crawls that are wildly unorganized in 30 cities on one day. And technically they're illegally operating in all of those states. But because they only pop up, 4 days a year, it's like local government usually aren't like monitoring that. So, in New Orleans, it's been quite the challenge because, you need to have a tour company license. You have to have like a fidelity bond, naming the city. There's all these just like red tape and hoops you need to jump through that none of them do. And people think it's us. So, there's no phone number for those. We get calls, we get bad reviews. So it's definitely been like a challenge, but there's really no way to police it. There's probably 8 or 10 companies that do exactly, Justin, what you're like saying. There's one that does the Harry Potter crawl. They do a St. Patrick's crawl, Cinco de Mayo, enter whatever special event there is. I think that there's definitely an opportunity there, but for me, I'm really big into creating a really curated experience that people have like a different type of time versus hiring 3 people who are just kind of, guiding or making sure people get like on this big cattle call situation from point A to point B. Like, that's not what I want to do. I want to make sure that people really feel like they had an experience with a guide that has taken you to spots that me or someone on my team has like identified as being like a quality spot versus, oh, hey, how many $13 pub crawl tickets can I sell on this Saturday? Like, that's not really what I'm about. We charge a lot more for our experience. So anytime that there's a like Taylor Swift concerts coming to town, like I love the idea of doing the Taylor Swift crawl. We're going to do it. No, I can't use Taylor Swift. I can't use Swifties. I can't use Eras. but I look into the things that are trademarked there and what I can and can't do. Like we do the big game crawl, which now we can't do because the NFL now just trademarked the big game.
Oh man, big game.
Super Sunday. So you got to get creative. I do that because we're a brand in our own right, and so I respect the idea of like trademarks and that. But no, you can't. There's a lot of terms that you're just not able to use.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super. I'd imagine you have a lot of competition because the barrier to entry is so low. Like with us, with Justin, especially with us, like it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars typically to launch a new location because of the assets and the permits and stuff. But like anyone can like say they have a pub crawl, right? And so you've had a lot of success like here at the end. Like what's your competitive advantage? Like what's your secret? How have you been able to penetrate these markets and kind of scale up so quickly? What's your digital marketing strategy?
So I would say that in 2 parts there. I think number one, we're not in this just to create this 250 person nightlife event. We make sure that there's enough tour guides on the tour that people are getting enough like one-on-one attention. So I think number one, quality of product. We're not just doing this random, hey, what bar lets us bring people here? It's much different than that. In addition to that is, I've just been committed to branding from day one. And so, if you went on a Crawl New Orleans tour, that your tour guide was there, cares about you, wants to make sure you find the place, wants to make sure that you get your transportation home. And then in the, just putting that logo on it, I think allows the customer to understand that it's just a little bit higher level of an experience. And then in addition to just our nightlife tours, we do lots of other tours that allow people to really like learn things about the city. I'm passionate about any city that we go to, which is why we're not in, 12 different like random cities. So, our other products are really an opportunity for people to like learn about each given market in a potentially like different experience. And then the digital marketing side, I've created a really kind of cool funnel that is replicatable. It took a long time to figure out like what that looks like exactly. And, things change, so it's not like foolproof, but I'm always looking at that is what's our top of funnel offer to get someone to click? How do we move them to the next one, to the next one, to the next one? So I think just not being afraid of change, because our marketing strategy is significantly different today than it was when it first started. So, evaluating metrics and changing messaging and A/B tests every day.
You do all that in-house or do you use a firm?
No, I do it myself, actually.
Yeah. I've met Brian with Brian at Arrival quite a few times, and we're always quickly talking marketing and booking systems. And one thing that's always stood out to me, Brian, is how you involve, how you connect and integrate your booking system with your email platform. Like, you have a lot of creative ways you do that, and it's been very inspiring. I know we've jammed a lot on that. It's been good.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time left, but what booking system do you use?
I use Peak Pro.
Nobody's perfect. It's okay.
Yeah. Hey, look, they know how I feel.
Yeah.
So it's
You know how I feel.
Glowing review.
I love it.
Listen, every new city goes on Peak, so I'm not ready to jump ship yet. But Brett, your guy just reached out to me again. So about making the switch. Yeah, just like days ago.
It's not my guy. It's Zola's guy, but
Your guy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of, Peak has a lot of cool stuff. Just there's one feature I'm hype about with Peak, which is those like widgets on the iOS app. They look super, super cool. But
you only love the widgets. Come on, now.
The widgets.
I got one last question for Brian. And it kind of goes along with the last question. I've talked to you also at a few Arrivals and in between, and have come to find that you love your automations and you're good at them. Is there an automation that you think everyone should look into when it comes to scaling, growing multiple locations? Like what do you think has kind of like saved you the most time / money / whatever in terms of just processes that you think other people should try to figure out?
So I think a two-part answer. Number one, we're e-commerce brands, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. We're competing for people's discretionary dollars online, right? So data collection is, I would say, like number one. I think all of us probably book decent-sized groups, and you're only collecting the data on that person that books. So, getting the data from everyone else on that reservation, I think, is super important. So having a waiver in place and then aggregating that data into whatever platform it is that you want to use there. So for me, I'm an active campaign guy. I know Go High Level is really popular in our industry. A lot of people use that as well. Is, getting that data, putting it into a system, and then automating things from there. So, I'm able to kind of like remarket to like customers who didn't actually buy from me. They were just part of a booking. So cross-selling and then being able to promote new city launches, new product launches, or cross-selling to an experience in that city that they may not have known we offer specifically, I would say is number one. And then just from a time saving standpoint is, then using all that and putting it into, sign the waiver or a reminder on your crawl or whatever it is. And also leveraging SMS in that because, a lot of people aren't reading the email. So, I think it makes for a really smooth operation when you deliver like specifics on, okay, well, we check in at this place, look for this or look for this. That kind of comes across in an automation, so the guy doesn't have to send it. I think has definitely like streamlined the operation a lot.
Nice,
awesome, cool, man. That's all I got question wise. Man, congrats on the growth that you've had so far and where it's headed. And I'm excited to watch it from afar. And it's been fun, knowing you the last few years and seeing you expand. So. It sounds like you've got some really cool things in place to make that continue expansion. So we'll be here watching you. I'll be watching along and enjoying the journey. And did you guys have any more questions for Brian?
No, but Hey, thanks for being on the show and sharing your insight. This is our first interview we've done, so we're happy it was you, and it's right on the money for what this podcast is about, is these decisions and how to grow, and go from a small business to like a real venture, and all the growing pains and all the tools and everything you need to do go along the way. So thanks for sharing your insight. It's cool to see you, and we'll be cheerleading you along the way.
Yeah. And we'll see you at Arrival.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking
So again, and I know I said this earlier, but thanks for having me. The two of you, Justin and Kai specifically, whenever I want to change something on my website, I go to yours. I know Brett is definitely an integral part of the tour scale and trolley pub side of that too. So, it's flattering being asked to be on it, because ultimately, I want to get closer to where you are today. So, thanks a lot. And, congrats on the new podcast too. It's like, I'll definitely be a listener in addition to being a guest.
Nice. Our first one.
Yeah.
You'll always be our first guest, Brian. Always.
And our first listener.
Yeah.
right.
There you go. No, and I really will. So
we appreciate that a lot, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you for the support.
Thank you, man.
Nice.
Awesome.
I gotta work, grind. That's just the way it is. I gotta get up, scale, and grow my biz. I gotta scale, grow,